and persistence in articulating that vision for both engagement and equity. And sometimes people will have the vision for equity, but they don't have the vision for what it means to engage people where they are in talking about that. And when we talk to people around the country, people often will tell us that what they really want is ways to meet with people who are different from themselves, ways to authentically hear each other's stories, like what you were talking about, Donald, and to dispel stereotypes and to build trusting relationships. But they also want not just to say stuff, they want to be heard by people who are making decisions and know that there's a sense of accountability. And they want to not just make friends by doing that, but they want to make change in what they're facing. And so that's what we hear. And so one of the things we work with people on doing is, how do you structure those face-to-face conversations so people have a chance to actually talk about the things that are most important, looking at the so-called achievement gap and saying, how did we get here, and how can we work on this together, and how does it affect you, and how does it affect me? I often, when I think about the structural realities, I often ask people, how many of us woke up this morning and said, today I'm going to be a good capitalist, I'm going to be a good consumer, I have to remember to use my credit card, I have to remember to stop at the mall, I have to remember to go online and go shopping, all those things because that's, I have to remember to be a consumer. Nobody says that. I mean, the opportunities to be a consumer are in our face all the time. It's easy to take advantage of them, right? I mean, it would be hard not to take advantage of them. What we don't have is something analogous to that, which is a system for democratic participation in the things that mean most in our lives, like our schools, that is welcoming and compelling, where we can come together and where we can actually have a voice and make a difference together. And sometimes we act as though we're trying to, we act as though it's like taking our castor oil, or it's our individual responsibility. We have to get up and remember to be a good citizen and reach across boundaries and things like that. And it is a lot of work because the structures aren't there, but the work I think we need to be thinking of is how do we create those structures. And it requires face-to-face opportunities for relationship building, learning together, looking at structural racism, doing problem solving together. It requires small groups, it requires large groups, it requires cross-sector collaboration. And I'll end with just telling one little vignette from a place we've been working in Montgomery County in Maryland. That is one of the most, is one of the largest school districts in the country, and it's also one of the most diverse. And in the last 10 years, with support from the superintendent, the public engagement office there has engaged more than 2,000 administrators, teachers, students, and parents in dialogues about the juncture of race, ethnicity, and the so-called achievement gap. And together they have been looking at what's happening, and they've been talking about where does this come from. White teachers have had a chance to say, how does my teaching affect, how does my implicit bias affect how I'm teaching? Principals have a chance to look at school policy to see how is it affecting, how is it playing into in terms of school discipline. Students have a chance to have a voice in what they're facing. And together, the school system is trying to move forward with the administrators also in that conversation about how do we work together to create a more equitable school system. So that's just one little vignette, but I hope it provides some, and on the sheet that went around, there's a story of that and some of the outcomes. Hope it provides some ideas of the tools that are available, and it's great to be here.
Great, thank you. What we were hoping to do now is really open up a conversation to allow you to ask our panelists also to ask each other to share from your own experiences some of the challenges and the successes that you've had in sort of creating a message and building that community support for it. I mean, I myself, just even listening to you for a few minutes, have a number of questions that I know I would like to ask, and maybe I'll just start off. I mean, if we're talking about building a message and building kind of community support for this idea of the value and the importance of racially diverse and economically diverse learning environments, I mean, how do we come to an agreement about what that message is? And how does sort of the information that some of our research friends have access to inform that message, and how do we understand and share the legal implications of that message with our community, so that we're not left just with anecdotal stories or just with the law that's disconnected from the personal experience of our parents or students? And how do we really inform our message by data and help our parents understand what that data means? And any of you can answer, and by any of you, I mean all of you.
Clearly, there's research out there that's been out there for many, many years, showing the positive effects of an integrated setting in education. And as I said, we have to continuously tell that story over and over again. At one time, I would say, during the civil rights movement, and maybe a little bit beyond, people were paying attention to those kinds of messages. These years, that message just kind of got lost. Again, I think due to the economy, due to increased racial and ethnic isolation, it keeps those barriers up so that people they're not looking at it. We have to continue to tell the message. We have to continue, we do, whether it's on websites or going to talk to people or talking to parents. I mean, again, I've been saying the same thing for 22 years. And you would think that after 22 years, with all of the times that we've been to court in Connecticut and all the media we've had, people would know about Sheff versus O'Neill, what it is, but they don't. They don't. So you have to just keep saying, you got to keep saying the message over and over and over again.
Can I just ask, because obviously I know the research, how do you say it? I'm really, because again, I know how I would say it as a lawyer, but I don't think how I say it as a lawyer is particularly useful to anyone but my law students. So I would love to hear literally what your message is, because you're very compelling, and I would just be very curious.
I go at it from the side of what is education, okay? What is education? Is education just the ABCs? Is that just what education is about? Isn't there a social component to being in your education? So it's not just getting your ABCs, but it's making friendships and partnerships, like the guy was saying, the superintendent was saying in the what do you call it, plenary session. You know, I'm trying to get folks to understand is that if you're in this little ball and that's all you know, that's all you're gonna ever know. But if you go and learn with people and make acquaintances with different kinds of people from different walks of life, your own ability, your own grasp for a better future is enhanced. So I try to get them to understand the importance of education and socialization as a part of education in the long term. There are also studies that are meant to show the negative effects of isolation, like for instance the school to prison pipeline, that shows how it is very possible, highly likely that if you're in a segregated, poverty-ridden district, that you're more likely going to go to prison than you're going to go to college. So there's all kinds of statistics, both positive and negative, out there you just have to keep, honest to goodness, you would think, you know, it would get in. But, you know, those of us who are mothers in the room, how many times do you have to say, can you pick your socks up? Can you pick your socks up? That's the sort of the same, you just got to keep telling the message over and over again.
Yes.
Hi, my name is Pauline Williams. I'm a parent of 2 children that went through Craig Magnet School since they were 3 years old. And I wanted to ask you, Elizabeth, again, what challenges and obstacles do you see that our students are facing now that they didn't face 22 years ago? And do you see a light at the end of the tunnel? Are you optimistic about our children's future?
You know, I believe in all things are possible because I believe in God. For those of you in the room who are inclined, share with me. For those of you who are not, bear with me. Okay. Our children face a lack of respect for education. And I think that's partly our fault. Okay, I think that not you and me. Mm-hmm. I'm talking about our society. I don't really think we place the kind of value on education as we once did. Our children face racism in our schools that thwarts their ability to thrive. They face, I think, which is even worse than racism, internalized racism, where the society has told them for so long, you can't do it, you're not good enough. They believe it. That goes to that you're acting white stuff. Mm-hmm. You know, people look at me, they ask me what kind of music. You like white music, Elizabeth. What is white music? I mean, if you ask our kids, they have a really rough time. They have it much more difficult than we had when we were growing up. I mean, we had a society that supported education, and therefore the fallout was even across the board. Education was important. Now education is becoming a back burner issue for America, and I cannot help but wonder how much of that is the direct result of the fact that more and more the children that are in American schools are children of color. How much of this placing education on the back burner has a direct correlation to that?
I would like to add to that. Being a public housing resident, working with different service providers from all walks of life, and even more specifically in the moment right now, something major that's happening. I don't know how many of you are familiar with Jamie Oliver's Food Revolution. Anyway, they have last Saturday the Food Revolution Day, and it's sort of like National Night Out where different localities around the country can support that. So in the coalition that I'm working with, I have a degree in Administration of Justice and Public Safety, which is a focus on juvenile justice, and I think now, I'm working on gaps in service delivery, where I am an academic proponent. I'm also an experienced credentialing proponent as well, and how you really get people that live in stagnant poverty to really grasp their reality and share that reality with service providers who start off wanting to do good things, but by the nature of the traction, whatever that word is, we come up against just sometimes insurmountable emotional challenges, and then you react all over the place. So I just want to, share that, you have to create an environment where there's no dumb question. Exactly. My father would tell me all the time, he who asks the question is food for the moment, but he who never asks the question is food forevermore. So and then